All right, sexual violence in the African American community. This is a really good one. Again, this is just intro information. There's so much more to learn, so I encourage you to educate yourself. So if we look at the history of African American communities, white slave owners used to use sexual assault to control their female slaves and increase their workforce. For example, getting them pregnant. Many black women fled the South after slavery to escape this. Black men were often accused of sexually assaulting white women. As a result, were beaten and sometimes killed. Sexual assault. Some more background information that you are going to find really important here. So, lynching was a method used by white supremacists to exert their power over black people despite the abolition of slavery. Sorry, that word is not my friend. Black men were often targets of lynching because at some point a rumor surfaced among white men and white women that the uncontrolled sexual prowess of black men threatened the delicate purity of a white woman. The fabrication of sexually deviant black males is often referred to as the social fear of the Negro. Often these rumors were made up by white men, not women. A black man standing too close to a woman or daring to have a friendship or relationship with her put him in grave danger. So while you'll not be able to see this video here, it will be emailed to you and will be part of your worksheet.
Duluth, Minnesota, at the point of Lake Superior, has something horrible in its history. After decades of denial, truth came into view, slowly, like an ore ship approaching the Twin Ports harbor. In 1920, in the midst of a mob of thousands, 3 black men were brutally lynched in downtown Duluth. Over 80 years later, the same streets were filled with another gathering, this time to reclaim the soul of the city by dealing with the presence of the past. In the early 20th century, Duluth's economy was being forged at the U.S. Steel plant. In the face of demands from labor, the company leveled the ever-present threat of replacement workers. In this case, blacks from the cotton fields of the South were lured north with good wages. This gave rise to racial tensions in the port town. But in June of 1920, it wasn't steel workers, but circus workers who would be at the center of a racially charged storm. The John Robinson Circus was in town as part of a tour of the Northland. Jimmy Sullivan and Irene Tuscan had spent the evening at the circus. The couple encountered black workers who were loading circus cars. What happened next is not clear. We know now that there was no sexual assault. But a few hours later, Jimmy called the police and reported that Irene had been raped. The Duluth police hauled half a dozen black circus workers to the city jail on Superior Street. By morning, on June 15th, rumors, hate, and hysteria bred the beginnings of a lynch mob. Among the instigators on the west end of town was Louis Dondino. He and a small band drove a truck throughout the neighborhood brandishing a length of rope to incite residents. The mounting mob tension caught the eye of Ed Nichols. In a city of 100,000, he was one of just 400 African American residents.
He told me the first words out of his mouth when he saw that headline was, "There's going to be a lynching." He barricaded himself and his family in the home, and he took out a pistol.
Nichols was right to worry. The mob headed east and ominously gathered in front of the police station. By evening, as darkness fell on Duluth, the mob moved on the jailhouse.
The Commissioner of Public Safety, a man named William Murnian, did not want the police to use weapons. In fact, as he is quoted, the commissioner said, "I don't want to see the blood of a single white man shed for these niggers." The police had no power to do anything against this mob.
Some of the men cried. Some prayed. But all they could do was await their fate as the mob broke through walls and then pried at bars. Finally, a deadly sentence fell on 3 of the prisoners: Elias Clayton, Elmer Jackson, and Isaac McGee.
As they were brought out of their cell, they were punched, kicked, spit on, and they were taken up the hill. It was a block from the jail. They clearly knew what was going to happen to them. There's a case that is always, I found, poignant and disturbing of a young man. He climbed the light pole in order to get a better look at what was going on, and the mob brought Isaac McGee toward the pole on which he sat at the top, threw a rope to him, and said, "Tie this on over the top." A lot of times I've wished that I hadn't discovered that particular story, because it continues to plague me. What if I had been that kid, 18 or 19-year-old boy, 1920? I mean, I would like to think I wouldn't do it. And what bothers me is that I cannot say for sure I wouldn't have, given those times. And I anguish about this, really have for 25 years.
In keeping with the tradition of American lynching, the night was consecrated with a photograph.
This is a striking photo in its horribleness. I mean, these are folks who wanted to get in this picture.
The next day, the nightmarish news would spread.
The New York Times editorialized, the Chicago papers, and there were a number of, and the Duluth paper itself editorialized against the mob activity. But there were papers that supported the mob. The most striking thing to me was a comment by a local citizen. His comment was, "Why all of this fuss? After all, they was just niggers."
This opinion seemed to inform how the legal system would regard the murders. The lynch mob, including ringleader Louis Dondino, was let off easy. Incredibly, and despite clear evidence of innocence, the surviving black circus workers were put through an aggressive trial for rape. Meanwhile, in St. Paul, African American civic leader Nellie Francis led the successful charge for America's first anti-lynching legislation. But in many ways, this was too little, too late.
There was a fear that was pervasive. People left, and in fact, in Superior, Wisconsin, the handful of black families that lived in Superior at the time of this were ordered out of town. All of them.
As the years passed, the tragedy was pushed out of the community's consciousness. It was also left out of the state's history books.
So it was officially a non-incident.
In the 60s, when I first got here, the air base brought many African Americans. Most of the people in Duluth were just very nice people.
Becoming a part of the black community in Duluth meant eventually learning about the city's dark secret.
I was probably about 17, and I had this older friend. He took me in and showed me the picture in the back room there. I was shocked, really shocked, because I knew things happened like that down south, but I I just didn't envision anything like that ever happening up here.
Then in the mid-70s, a young Duluth writer went looking for a dramatic story and found history.
Over time, however, the book sort of took on a life of its own.
That's the first edition. Finding out that a lynching took place here was one of those things that changed my life. Totally changed my life. Something inside me said, you know, you need to do something about this, and we need to honor them.
If you don't deal with your difficult history, then you're not being honest about anything. It was Henry. We just talked about it a lot.
Duluth still needs to grow up.
He's a doer.
Racism is very alive and well in our community.
He knows how to get stuff done.
After meeting with Heidi, I made a few telephone calls in the community.
I was very happy that I could be part of this.
You know, there's always struggles, particularly when you come together cross-culturally. But it was a group that is very committed.
When people say, as they ask all committee people, why are you involved? I sometimes get, I think, a little more emphasis on you. You know, why are you involved?
What a beautiful group of people.
And then just find a spot to eat.
The Clayton Jackson McGee Memorial Committee organized a range of activities to commemorate the victims and celebrate the city's growing diversity.
Moving and what the difference that the Diversity Project has made. But
they even worked with students at Duluth Central High to create diversity curriculum based on the buried history of the lynchings. But all along, these neighbors wanted to do something profound and permanent for the young men who were murdered and the community that remained wounded. Heidi and Henry saw an opportunity, an empty lot at the infamous intersection of the lynchings, a perfect place for an ambitious memorial.
I got the call from Henry Banks, and I asked the same question I think a lot of people ask. I said, why? You know, why do we want to dredge this up? And if you can convince me that we should be doing this, I'd be happy to talk to you about it.
And so after that, all of a sudden the mayor was on board.
The committee took proposals for a memorial. A pair of artists were selected for their concept that would use words, space, and sculpture to explore history and humanity.
Tilt your head just slightly this way. Yeah, that's it. I need these to be people, individuals, each unique and different, and that would be best for me to have models. We had to depersonalize these people to lynch them, but we're going to reinvest them with their unique personalities or a unique personality and portray them in a respectful way. Amazing.
Making it physical, making it something that is there, it makes Duluth a better place. There's no doubt in my mind of that. I want to take back that corner. It's got to be taken back. And that's about getting as many people there as were there the first time. Doesn't matter how long it takes.
Heidi's hope of balancing the historic weight of the lynch mob with a positive gathering came to be on October 10, 2003, when thousands of Minnesotans marched to the new memorial. After decades of denial, after years of grassroots work, after months of creation, the memorial was finished, and the healing from the fractured history was continuing. The final speaker at the event was Warren Reed. Because of the book and the committee's work, the Seattle resident had recently learned a dark truth that 83 years before, in the same intersection, his great-grandfather was among the leaders of the lynch mob. It was Louis Dandino.
As a long-held family secret, and its deeply buried shame was brought to the surface and unraveled. We will never know the destinies and legacies that these men would have chosen for themselves had they been allowed to make that choice. But I know this. Their existence, however brief and cruelly interrupted, is forever woven into the legacy of my own life. My son will continue to be raised in an environment of tolerance, understanding, and humility, now with even more pertinence than before.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, help us keep them coming. Visit tpt.org today and show your support. Thank you.
So, going on some more background information, Black women who are sexually assaulted by Black men are often afraid to report because they may be seen as a traitor of their race. Black women are expected to be Black first, women second. This means that the victim should just let it go. Just let it go. No. But it is a reality for the African American community. Calling law enforcement to report a Black male means sentencing the man to a system that continues to be racist and unfair. There's a fear among Black women that their offenders will be sentenced because they are Black, not because they raped someone. There's also a fear that the white society will use these reports to fuel for racism and fear of Black men. So this video too will be in your worksheet and sent in an email for you guys to watch. So now we're going to go for a little bit into the Latino community. So first I want to start off by saying Latino does not mean Mexican. Latinos come from many countries besides Mexico, including Puerto Rico, Cuba, Colombia, Ecuador, El Salvador, and Guatemala. Many Latinos immigrate to the United States hoping for better education and more job opportunities. Some are supporting families who still reside in their home countries of origin. Latinos often have a strong family ties with extended family, such as grandparents, aunts, and uncles. These people can offer extra support, but can also be extra burdens for the victims and survivors. Many Latinos have a strong religious faith. Most identify practicing Catholicism. Barriers to reporting. So victims may feel that they don't have the right to upset their family by reporting. Documentation and understanding the rights of undocumented individuals. If they're undocumented, they may feel like maybe us advocates would report this to someone, which is not true. Language barriers. Transportation, housing, low wages, and poverty. Maybe they can't get to us. Maybe, they have to work constantly, so we're not a viable resource for them. Unsafe and unfair employment conditions.